Can you imagine? A hotel with 100 rooms, its windows covered with metal sheets, and its doors only opening from the outside? A hotel filled with numerous deadly mazes and secret passages, turned into a trap by its owner to catch, torture, and kill his victims. While Jack the Ripper was spreading terror in the foggy city of London, another equally brutal killer was taking lives on the other side of the Atlantic. The story of the horrifying blood castle built by Dr. H. Holmes, which he turned into a terrifying human slaughterhouse. In 1887, a handsome tall young man walked into a pharmacy located in the Englewood suburb in the south of Chicago. He approached the owner and asked if she needed someone to help manage the pharmacy. The woman, visibly exhausted from running the pharmacy alone due to her husband Dr. Holden suffering from cancer, immediately agreed, especially upon learning that the young man before her is a doctor. His good looks likely played a significant role in securing the job. Holmes was a whirlwind of activity at work, and his charm, humor, and friendliness, especially towards the female customers, greatly increased the pharmacy's sales. This significantly boosted Mrs. Holden's admiration and trust in her new assistant. Gradually, she handed over the pharmacy to him, and he became its de facto manager. Holmes's ambitions knew no bounds, and he awaited the right opportunity to achieve his goals. This opportunity arose when Dr. Holden, the actual owner of the pharmacy, passed away. Holmes managed to persuade the widow to sell the pharmacy to him, agreeing to her condition that she be allowed to continue living in the apartment above the pharmacy. However, Mrs. Holden disappeared suddenly not long after. Holmes told everyone that she had moved to California to live with relatives, and she was never seen again. In truth, no one was expected to see her because Holmes had killed her. Herman Webster was born in Gilmanton, New Hampshire in 1860 into a middle-class family with roots tracing back to the early European settlers of the region. His father was an alcoholic but was respected by the community and served as the town's postmaster. Early in his life, Herman changed his name to H. Holmes, the name he would be known by for the rest of his life and under which he would commit all his gruesome crimes. He was a troublesome child, frequently getting into trouble, and had a cruel streak, taking pleasure in harming animals and young children. However, the one positive aspect of his character was his academic excellence. He was always a top student. He completed high school at the age of 16, and 2 years later, in 1878, he married Clara Lovering. Holmes applied to medical school in Chicago, funding his education with money inherited by Clara from her family. Early in his studies, Holmes devised a scheme to make money. He found a way to steal corpses from the college lab, mutilate them to make it appear they had been murdered, plant them in various locations around the city, and then collect the life insurance policies he had taken out on the deceased, claiming they were his relatives. In 1879, Holmes left New Hampshire, traveling and leaving behind his wife Clara, whom he would never see again. For 6 years, he moved around various American cities, a period shrouded in mystery as investigators could not determine exactly what he did during this time. As usual, people created many stories and legends about this obscure period of his life. In 1885, Holmes moved to Chicago and married a girl from a wealthy family named Martha Belknap. Using her family's money, he opened a printing office, but the business did not succeed, forcing him to abandon it and leave his wife. He reappeared in another part of Chicago, working as an assistant in Dr. Holden's pharmacy, which he gradually took over as previously explained. Over time, Holmes bought shops and land adjacent to the pharmacy, where he later built a huge 3-story building that the neighbors called the Castle because of its size and strange shape. The castle was designed by Holmes himself, and during construction he changed the workers several times under the pretext that their work was not perfect so that no one would be able to know the secrets of construction and understand its sections except him. The castle was a truly strange building, the lower floor of which contained several luxurious shops, in addition to Holmes's pharmacy. The upper floors included Holmes's office, in addition to 100 blind rooms whose windows were closed with metal sheets. and whose doors only opened from the outside. It contained many mazes and secret passages. Some stairs led to doors that opened to a great height, and behind them there was nothing but the empty wasteland behind the castle. Many doors opened on closed walls, and most of the rooms were equipped with a specific alarm system that could, through this method, so Holmes would know if one of the inmates wanted to escape from the castle. There were pipes for transporting gas extending to all the rooms, but opening and closing them could only be controlled from Holmes' office. In addition to that, there was a large basement beneath the castle containing barrels of gas chemical acids and ovens for burning bodies. The construction was completed at the end of 1891, and Holmes opened it as a hotel in preparation for the huge celebrations that were being prepared in Chicago on the occasion of the 400th anniversary of Columbus' discovery of the American continent, which coincided with the year 1893. For 3 years, Holmes used the building to torture and kill his victims, selecting them from among the young women working in the shops on the castle's ground floor. One of the job requirements was to take out a life insurance policy, with Holmes paying the premiums and being the sole beneficiary. Holmes also derived pleasure from torturing and killing some lovers who saw his hotel as a suitable hideaway from prying eyes, as well as some unlucky travelers who happened to stay the night at his hotel. Sometimes, he simply killed hotel guests by opening the gas pipes connected to their rooms. Nobody could discover what Holmes was doing because he never kept any cleaners or workers at the castle for more than 2 weeks, always finding an excuse to fire them without pay. According to the laws of that time, workers were not entitled to wages unless they completed a full month of work. So many investigators believe Holmes never paid a penny in wages during his years at the castle. Most of his victims were women, especially young girls whom he lured by placing job ads in newspapers for positions in his stores. Sometimes, he placed marriage ads, exploiting his good looks to ensnare his carefully selected victims, often preferring those without families so no one would search for them when they disappeared. He also ensured they told no one about their new job and brought all their savings under the pretense of investing them and earning profits. Once a victim set foot on the upper floors of the castle, she became a prisoner at Holmes's mercy. He delighted in raping and torturing them, sometimes keeping them alive for weeks before killing them when he tired of them. He would then burn their bodies or dissolve them in acid barrels. Holmes also had innovative methods for extracting their skeletons to sell as educational models to medical institutions. However, Holmes did not always kill the women who fell into his grasp. Some he used as accomplices in his crimes. One such woman was Julia, who arrived in Chicago with her husband and daughter. Her husband worked in the jewelry store Holmes managed on the castle's ground floor. Julia soon fell in love with Holmes and became his mistress. Her husband, suspicious of their relationship, left her and quit his job. Julia and her daughter stayed with Holmes in the castle. Investigators believe Julia knew about Holmes's crimes and helped him with some of them. However, her days with Holmes ended quickly. During his confessions, Holmes admitted to killing Julia during an abortion he performed on her and poisoning her daughter Pearl, whose body he then dissolved in acid along with her mother's. He sold Julia's skeleton to a medical institution in Chicago. Holmes claimed he killed her because she had become reckless due to her increasing jealousy. Among Holmes's notable victims was Emmeline Sigrand, a beautiful girl whom Holmes enticed to work for him with the promise of a high salary. She ended up in one of the castle's soundproof rooms. Holmes later confessed to investigators that he was infatuated with her and kept her alive for a whole month, repeatedly raping her before killing her when he grew bored. Her fiancé, Ralph, came looking for her but never left the castle again. Holmes admitted to killing Ralph during one of his scientific experiments on his victims, which included measuring the human body's tolerance for torture. Holmes had constructed a dissection table that stretched the body until it tore apart. After the conclusion of the Columbus World's Fair in Chicago, the city experienced an economic downturn. As a result, Holmes left Chicago and traveled to Texas, where he took control of the inheritance of Minnie Williams, a wealthy young woman from Texas. Minnie became Holmes's lover and partner in crime for a year. She was as ruthless as Holmes and even killed her own sister to claim her inheritance. However, Holmes, who preferred to leave no witnesses, later killed Minnie and took her wealth. Holmes initially wanted to build a new castle in Texas similar to the one in Chicago, but he abandoned the idea because Texas law was strict and unforgiving towards crime. Holmes's downfall came due to his last scam with his old partner Benjamin Pitzel. Holmes convinced Pitzel to fake his own death so that his wife and Holmes could split a $10,000 insurance payout. Pitzel, who was struggling financially, agreed. However, Holmes killed Pitzel for real and applied for the insurance money. He then deceived Pitzel's wife, who was in desperate financial straits, into leaving 3 of her children in his care while she went to live with her parents, awaiting the insurance payout. Holmes traveled with the children across several northern states, intending to flee to Canada. During this journey, Holmes killed the 3 Pitzel children at different stops, and his flight ended with his arrest in Boston in late 1894. Ironically, Holmes was arrested not for murder but for horse theft in Texas, a charge he dismissed lightly, planning to escape prison and run away with his 3rd wife, Georgina. Unfortunately for Holmes, the police conducted investigations while he was in custody. The caretakers of his Chicago murder castle informed the police that Holmes never allowed them to clean the upper floors, raising suspicions. The police decided to search the upper floors. The police entered the castle at night. They could not have imagined the horrors awaiting them. In the eerie silence, under the dim lights of their lanterns, the investigators' faces were marked with fear and anticipation. In one of the ovens in Holmes's office, they found parts of a woman's body along with long strands of her hair. In the basement, they discovered a large wooden barrel containing a thick liquid, later dubbed the soup of the dead, with the partially dissolved body of a small child believed to be Pearl, the daughter of Holmes's former lover, Julia. Names of the victims who disappeared in the murder castle began to surface. Katie, who managed the castle's restaurant, her sister Liz, and Liz's daughter Anne, all vanished without a trace. Wilfred Cole, a man who once entered the castle, was never seen again. Harry Walker, who briefly worked as Holmes's secretary, also disappeared. The list of missing people grew longer, with their remains found scattered in the soup of the dead and the Bone Hill, where Holmes stored skeletons to sell to medical institutions and colleges. The police estimated the number of victims to be between 100 and 200, though some investigators believe the true number to be at least 230, considering the many people who disappeared in Chicago during the World's Fair. However, Holmes was tried for only 27 murders, including Pitzel and his 3 children. Despite finding many bodies in the basement, the police could not identify most of them due to the extent of mutilation and intermingling. Most of Holmes's victims were women, but there were also some men and children. Holmes initially confessed to 27 murders, but later claimed innocence, stating that he was possessed by the devil. Due to his contradictory and deceitful statements, investigators found it challenging to document his confessions, leaving many aspects of his crimes shrouded in mystery to this day. On May 7, 1896, Holmes was hanged in Philadelphia. Many legends have been spun about his execution, but according to a New York Times reporter who was present in the execution room, Holmes remained calm and showed no signs of fear or anxiety. He did not die quickly. Instead, he writhed for no less than 10 minutes, and it took 15 minutes to confirm his death. Yet the legends did not end with his execution, as many still insist that his angry spirit roams the streets of Chicago and that numerous strange incidents occurred after his death, including the mysterious burning of his blood-stained castle. The strangest thing is Holmes' grave. According to his will, he requested to be buried 10 feet deep and to have reinforced concrete poured over his coffin to the top of the grave. No one knows exactly why he made this request, but some believe he feared his body would be exhumed and tampered with after his death, just as he often did with the bodies of his victims. For many years, the blood-stained castle stood in the Englewood neighborhood. No one dared to live in it or even enter it, and it remained abandoned until 1938 when the government demolished it and built a post office in its place. Holmes is gone forever, but the terror he caused still casts its shadow on faces when his name is mentioned. His last words continue to echo with the wind that sweeps through the streets of Chicago in the Englewood neighborhood, where his blood-stained castle once stood. I was born with the devil in me. I cannot help the fact that I am a murderer, no more than the poet can help the inspiration to sing. I was born with the evil standing as my sponsor beside the bed where I was ushered into the world, and he has been with me since.